Okay, so I know exactly what you guys are thinking right now. Nexiph, you haven't really uploaded in quite a while. So if you don't follow me on like Twitter or Instagram or anything, basically I've been pretty sick. I was sick all last weekend, and then that led to me losing my voice literally this entire week, and I just got it back just enough for me to be able to record the audio for this video. It'll probably be gone after this. But with no voice, that means I can't make any videos, so I'm sorry about that, but I'm back better than ever, kinda. But anyways, just like always, if you do have a myth you would like me to test in the next or future episodes of the Fortnite Mythbusters, make sure to go down in the comments below and drop a comment of that myth for a pretty good chance to have it tested. Also guys, with the release of Season 9, let me know what you like better. Do you like the combat or the pump? Personally, I like the combat shotgun. A lot of people are gonna hate me, but I feel like it's just such a better casual flow of the game. Anyways guys, without further ado, let's begin today's episode. Jumping straight into the first myth. The first myth is, do traps notice you if you're invisible from the shadow bomb? Now, ever since the shadow bombs were released in game, this has always been a top comment on just about every single video, so a lot of you guys seem to want to know this answer. To test this out in game, I went into creative mode and set up 2 walls with every single trap in it. So I had the ice trap, I had a spike trap, as well as a poison dart trap. That way we could see if one might affect you while the other one possibly doesn't. From there, I changed teams. That way, of course, it will do damage to me and the spike trap could kill me, or it possibly couldn't if it doesn't even notice me at all. I first tested it out with the poison dart trap, and when I went in front of the trap and actually had it hit me while I was invisible, to my surprise, you could actually see little poison darts floating in midair as if it was stuck in your player. And this is actually really cool because I personally did not even know that you could see the poison darts. I then moved on to the spike trap, and of course the spike trap also did affect me, as well as the ice trap. After testing this out, now I know that if I am invisible while using a shadow bomb, to definitely watch where I am moving around and possibly like a build fight or even buildings, because traps still notice you somehow. Moving on to the next myth. The next myth is, can you see someone who is invisible from the shadow bomb with a thermal scoped AR? Now sadly, with the thermal scoped AR no longer being in a regular game, this is still obviously very good to test for if it eventually gets added back in, which I definitely think it will, because it's a pretty balanced gun, I'm not gonna lie. In game, when I tested this out, I had my friend throw a shadow bomb down at himself to make himself go invisible. I then had a legendary thermal scoped AR and zoomed down the scopes, and instead of it showing the bright yellow or orange body heat, you can't really see them at all when they're fully invisible. Now what is pretty interesting though is when they are moving, or when the shadow bomb is slowly fading out from the invisibility, you could see the outline of the player slowly coming back as if you weren't even holding a thermal scoped AR at all. This was actually pretty interesting and something I did not know. Jumping into the next myth. The next myth is, are you able to drive a vehicle if you're invisible by the shadow bomb? Now this is actually a pretty good myth if you think about it, because usually when you go invisible from the shadow bomb, the least on your mind is to get into a vehicle and drive away, of course, because you already move pretty quick and you can bounce pretty high and nobody really notices you. In game, when I tested this out, I spawned in just about all of the main vehicles that are in the game that anybody really uses. Now I first started off with the baller. When I was invisible and I jumped into the baller, you of course were able to drive around like regular, but the interesting thing is that you were unable to use your grapple until your player was no longer invisible. I was actually pretty surprised when I saw this, and I definitely did not expect that. The next vehicle I tested was a golf cart, and the main thing I wanted to see is if I was able to drift around and still boost while in the cart. Luckily, while you're invisible and you drive a golf cart, everything is basically the exact same. Nothing too special goes on here. The same thing with the quad crusher as well. You were still able to boost the quad if you did have enough time to actually have boost be able to be produced up enough for it to actually work. Lastly, with the cannon, you are actually unable to get into the barrel of the cannon if you are pushing it from the back while invisible, as well as shoot a cannonball out while you're invisible. You have to wait for it to wear off before you could shoot a cannon, which I did not expect. Jumping into the next myth. The next myth is, what happens if you throw a sneaky snowman at someone who is invisible from a shadow bomb? This comment was also highly requested. So many people commented for this myth to be tested out, and the outcome is pretty cool. In game, when I tested this out, I spawned in some shadow bombs as well as some sneaky snowman grenades and gave my friend the shadow bombs to make himself invisible. Now when I threw this sneaky snowman grenade at my friend who was invisible, surprisingly it actually did affect him. The snowman was basically just floating around with no legs, and after a couple of seconds it automatically disappeared, and you could still see the hand motions that it does if the sneaky snowman gets thrown onto another player and they move for a couple of seconds. And from there, my friend was still invisible for a short period of time a little bit after that. So it was overall a pretty interesting and a cool myth. Jumping into the next myth is, will a boogie bomb still affect you if you're invisible from a shadow bomb? Now I personally feel like this is a pretty cool myth and one that could definitely happen to you in game if you are in the middle of a fight and somebody does end up throwing down a boogie bomb. In game, when I tested this out, my friend threw a boogie bomb at me while I was invisible from the shadow bomb, and surprisingly you could see that my player starts to dance for a second. I then double jump up and the dance is entirely over. Just the only interesting thing is that the disco bomb is still visible above your head as if you were still dancing. On top of that, the entire audio from the boogie bomb itself gets removed and you can't hear anything. So if this ever happens to you in game while you're invisible, I suggest that you just get out of there before you take a shotgun bullet to the face. Going into the next myth is, what happens when two supply drops land on top of each other? Now this has been a myth I've been searching for literally over a year, and I have never seen it anywhere on YouTube, on Twitter, anywhere up till about this point. Massive shout out to Joe Regal for sending me this clip. This is probably the closest we're ever going to see two supply drops landing on top of each other for possibly the end of Fortnite. Now in the replay clip that he sent, you can see two supply drops, well actually three, but two that are on top of each other slowly gliding down, and the people at the very bottom are shooting the top supply drop's balloon. Now if you ever have shot a supply drop down, you know that when the balloon actually pops, the crate will shoot down to the ground extremely fast, and usually it's a very buggy situation. It basically just teleports down, and that sadly is what happens in this case. The crate itself dropped and landed on top of the other balloon, and from there it basically just floated in mid-air at the exact point where it made contact with the balloon below it. The crate from the balloon which got popped is just floating and stuck in mid-air until they actually broke the balloon at the very bottom or opened up the crate, which overall popped the balloon, and that crate then dropped down extremely fast as if it was on a platform that got broken in the middle of the sky. From seeing this, if those two balloons were never popped and two crates actually landed on top of each other, the top balloon would basically get stuck on top of the other one until it were to be open, and then it would slowly glide down just like it were to be regular. Overall though, I thought this was actually a pretty cool myth and definitely a question I've been asking myself for a very long time. Now this next myth is, since a bush removes all first bullet damage, can you survive a heavy sniper headshot while wearing a bush? Now when I saw this myth, I knew that I definitely had to test it, because the heavy sniper, if you don't know already, no matter what rarity it is, if you get headshot by that thing, you're out of the game for good. So when me and my buddy tested this out in game, we were expecting a pretty simple answer, and that was the bush would not really block the bullet, you would just go through and die immediately. But to our surprise, when testing this out in game, it was very unreliable. We shot multiple bullets at each other's heads from all different angles, and sometimes the bullet would go through and end up killing us instantly, while the others, it would just pop off the bush and we wouldn't take any damage at all. Now we honestly had no clue why exactly this was happening. We had many theories as to why, and our main reason is that part of his skin was sticking up out of the bush, which somehow made the hitbox bigger, but that doesn't really make any sense because from when we tested out in a previous episode, all hitboxes are the same just about all of the time. So honestly, we have no explanation for this. I don't know why it happened. If some of you guys know something we don't, that would be awesome if you could drop it down in the comments below, because we definitely did not have an answer for this one. Anyways guys, that's gonna wrap it up for today's episode. I hope you have enjoyed. If you have, make sure to leave a like and also subscribe if you are new to the channel. Also guys, I finally got my own supporter creator code. Go into the item shop and use code Nexiph. Send me a screenshot on Twitter at it's Nexiph or Instagram at Nexiph, and I'll definitely reply with many thankful hearts. Yeah, whatever. But I'm also extremely sorry for the lack of uploads. I was pretty sick, if you heard in the intro already, and my voice right now is hurting a little bit. Hopefully I don't lose it tomorrow. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this far in the video. If you made it this far, comment code Nexiph in the comments below. I'll try and reply to as many as I can, and I will see you guys next time.